Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the NFL Draft Triple Take presented by UPMC. Mike Prisuta, Matt Williamson, and Dale Lolley with you yet again. We've done this a few times now in advance of the NFL Draft, but we've got more to come. We're doing every position, not just once, but twice in preview form today. Our look at the edge rushers, and what an intriguing place to look, not just because of the importance of the position, but because of what is out there in terms of the prospects. Before we dive in again, I want to remind everyone that all these videos will be shared on Steelers.com, the Steelers mobile app, and the Steelers official YouTube page. You can catch the audio on the Triple Take podcast and Steelers Nation Radio, and you can subscribe to that Triple Take podcast wherever you download your favorite on-demand audio content. Matt, I wanted to start with you on the edge guys because for me at least, edge presents something of a conundrum this year. Couple of the guys that are highly thought of, and one of them's Kwity Paye from Michigan, and another one is Jason Owe from Penn State. I didn't have either one of those guys in my initial top five. Now, not that I didn't think either's a prospect, but I found five guys I was more sure of. And the second time around, I'm having a hard time getting past a lack of on-field production. I know that the testing's great, the athleticism, the explosiveness, all that stuff. I mean, Owe had 0 sacks this year.
He blew Tarski.
Kwity Paye has 1 career pass defense and 1 career forced fumble in 4 years at Michigan. 11.5 sacks, which is not an overwhelming number. And yet you have guys who I respect. You know, Charlie Casserly is one of them, the former general manager. He said that Kwity Paye is, quote, the most explosive guy off the football in this draft as far as pass rushers. And Dane Brugler, who works for The Athletic, another guy who I think highly of in terms of his ability to really present compelling arguments and assessments of these guys. He said that Kwity Paye, Owe is a high-risk, high-reward pass rusher in the Jason Pierre-Paul mode. So, Matt, you're the old scout among us. Where do you draw the line between this guy looks like Bruce Jenner, but he doesn't play football like Bubba Smith?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a looks like Tarzan plays like Jane situation here with both these guys. It's a conundrum. I mean, first of all, both of them are in contention to maybe even be the first edge guy off the board. And we've been a little spoiled with Chase Young, Myles Garrett, the Bosas, the no-brainer guys at this position. Well, there isn't one this year, and the demand remains the same, which is great throughout the league. And you're right. Both these guys are amazing testers. I mean, rare testers, rare movement skills, rare body types, rare explosion. And you see it on the field. The production isn't there. It doesn't mean that they're invisible when you watch tape. They are disruptive, you know, lumping them both together. But there is an art to putting the quarterback on the ground too, and they haven't mastered it. That's for sure.
And you got to get the ball out once in a while too, right? I mean,
yeah, right. I mean, you're a special athlete. You should be wreaking more havoc. And then you look at a guy like Danielle Hunter from the Vikings. He was very similar at LSU and is a great NFL player. A lot of it, I think, is how much do you trust your coaching staff, your position coach? What are you going to ask of them from day one? And you'll probably like to hear the sound of this, but that Michigan coaching staff, they took Paye and moved him all around. I mean, why not just leave him in a spot and let him master that first and then go from there? So maybe their new teams in the NFL will do that, play them 30, 35 snaps, passing downs, bring them along slow, but it's a little frightening.
Yeah, I think sometimes too what happens, especially at some of those bigger schools where they're not the only guy there who can get after the quarterback. Sometimes you just get beaten to the quarterback. And, you know, maybe you would have gotten that sack. But you're right, Matt. There is an art to getting the quarterback on the ground. That's just to jump ahead to one of my guys who's kind of my sleeper in this draft, a guy named Chris Garrett out of Concordia St. Paul. Now, it's a Division II school, but in 3 seasons, he had 48 tackles for a loss, 36.5 sacks, and forced 15 fumbles, which is a Division II record.
And they probably knew who he was. I mean, they probably were game planning around him.
And he was the only guy they had to worry about, but he was still productive. That's the kind of production you want to see out of a guy like Owa, for example, who runs a 4.39 40 at 257 pounds. I mean, he's a ridiculous athlete. Maybe somebody gets him into the NFL. Maybe he was misused in college and he becomes a great player. But to your point, Mike, there is some, you don't know until you know.
Yeah, and I guess I still have, I don't want to say I have my doubts about these guys, but they are not at the top of my list. They're not as high on my list as I think they are just about everybody else. Now, I don't know what that probably says. I don't know as much as guys who evaluate talent for a living and actually make the draft picks, but I found that curious. And Matt, it leads me to another question I've had throughout this process. I don't think I've brought it up in this environment, but all these pro days, this guy had a great pro day. That guy had a great pro day. Well, should they not? I mean, there's nobody out there trying to stop them from having a great pro day. The quarterbacks, they script the throws to do what the NFL wants them to do. As Mike Mayock used to say on the NFL Network, fast guys run fast. Strong guys lift a lot of weights. I mean, has this stuff maybe tilted a little bit over the line in terms of how much importance we attach to it?
Yeah, because when you study the pro days this year in particular, they're off the charts. I mean, everybody's doing better than the next guy. But, I mean, you're not fudging verticals and broads and things like that, too. I mean, so that's as valuable of information as it was in the combine days, back when we had a combine. I'm old enough to remember when we had combine. But one of the things about the combine that people don't think about is it's a very unnatural environment. You didn't sleep in your bed. You got up early. You were in the bod pod in the morning and dragged around like geese. It's very.
Now, the bod pod, let me interrupt you. So that's where they're hitting your knee with a hammer and looking in your ear with a flashlight. And
all that good stuff. Yeah. Very uncomfortable situation, and then you're in interviews all night long and you barely sleep and you're nervous. Well, it's a lot easier to perform when you sleep in your bed, you call your buddy, the receiver, up and he's ready to run routes for you and you're in your home turf. And, oh, by the way, it might be a really fast track.
And let's face it too. A lot of these guys that we're talking about, or at least a good number of them, opted out last year. So what have they been doing the last year? Training for their pro days because they know it was going to be a big deal.
Yeah, they're all valid points, and some of these numbers, to Matt's point, are just.
It's been ridiculous this year.
It's not just the numbers themselves, but how many guys are doing it. It's not the way it usually goes. I wonder if we'll see a regression next year, and maybe some of these huge verticals and broad jumps will be a little bit more exclusive than we've seen to this point. But Dale, anybody jump out at you taking a second look back at the edge guys? Because I know
two guys.
There's a lot of them up near the top, and as Matt said, nobody really jumps out, but appears to be a position of depth.
There's two guys here that intrigued me a little bit. One was Matt's guy early on in the process. The other one was kind of mine that we talked about a lot on the drive. The first one's Chris RUMPH out of Duke, and he's a guy that was considered a little undersized. Maybe he was
a really intelligent player.
Very intelligent player. But, it looked like he would be in the 230-pound range. But he came in at his pro day. Can't fudge this. He was 244 pounds. So at 6'3", 244 pounds, he's got more than enough size to play the edge. Son of an NFL coach, so that he has those bloodlines. And the production, 14 and a half sacks in 23 games in the last 2 seasons. So there's a lot to like there with him. With Patrick Johnson out of Tulane, a little shorter at 6'2", but 240 pounds. And you want to talk about production. Over the last 34 games, 21 sacks. The guy can get to the quarterback. And again, getting to the quarterback, but knowing how to get him on the ground is a big deal. It's a big deal. There are lots of guys who get close to getting the quarterback on the ground, but don't do it. This guy gets the quarterback on the ground.
Matt, anybody jump out at you in round 2 here?
I mentioned how your favorite Wolverines might not get the most out of some of their talent that they bring in. I'm starting to kind of get that feeling at Florida State as well. And they have 2 edge guys, Joshua Kando and Janaris Robinson, that they're not going to be in the first round, but there's a lot to work with both of them. They're both 6'5 and a half, 260, good, a good pedigree coming to Florida State, great pedigree coming to Florida State, tested really well. and they had 3 or 4 different defensive systems while they were there and never really quite lived up to it. But if you watch the highlights, which is a bad way to scout, trust me, you could understand why, hey, I'll take a shot on one of these two, and they may have better professional careers than they did at Florida State.
You know why the highlights are a bad way to scout is because invariably the ball goes in the basket.
Right.
They don't show a lot of highlights of missed shots.
Boy, this quarterback's really accurate.
Yeah. Watch this. The guy 3 hops a pass to a wide open guy in the end zone. No, you don't see that on the highlight shows. Matt, just
tackled in the backfield.
Before we get out of here, to your experience or in your philosophy, maybe at what round do you stop drafting on hard and fast what you think you know, and when do you start taking shots? And the guys you just described said, okay, there's not much here, but there's a lot to work with, so let's throw it at the wall and see if it sticks.
I think that's a tough question to answer, to be honest with you. It depends what your team needs. Do you just need a third guy you can trust that's a good special teamer, that, as Dale and I like to say, is just a leadoff double, is a solid guy? Or are you spinning that wheel trying to hit a home run on like an Oway, or a Pay, that we can live with him, taking a year or two. And in a way, the Steelers did that with Bud Dupree. I mean, he wasn't a finished product coming out of school. And, this term project, people think is a bad thing until the project hits and you coach him up. And in year 3, he's a dominant force. So I think it really depends on what you're after at that position and how stable your job is as an evaluator.
That's a very good point to make.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're one year to year, if you're in a situation where, it's year 4 and you haven't won yet, you're probably not going to take that shot at a guy like that. You're probably going to go for the double. But, if you feel pretty safe in your job or you're new to the job, you can afford to take that chance.
Yeah, invariably, right? It's the end justifies the means if the end is where you wanted to end up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you took them around too early, or you traded too many picks to get that draft choice so you could get that guy. Well, not if it's a home run. Because
right.
A home run's a home run.
Hindsight is 20/20, always.
Usually. That's going to do it for this edition of Triple Take. Before we get out of here, I want to remind everyone that you can catch these videos on Steelers.com, the Steelers mobile app, and the Steelers official YouTube page. You can get the audio on the Triple Take podcast and also on Steelers Nation Radio. And if you want to subscribe to that Triple Take podcast, you can do that. You can do that wherever you download your favorite on-demand audio content. Thanks for finding us, however, and whenever you found us. We will be doing it again. There's more to talk about, even in a further review context, as we continue preparing for the first round of the NFL draft on April the 29th. Until we catch you again, thanks for finding us. For Matt and Dale, I'm Mike. We'll see you again soon. This has been the NFL Draft Triple Take, presented by UPMC.